This is my IBM x3650 M2 enterprise server from 2010, and it's mounted on my wall. I've been trying to get this machine running for quite some time. When I received it, it was in terrible condition. But a few things about it caught my eye. The really nice ADP logo on the front, and some of the labels that it had. An IP address also owned by ADP, and a DMS label, which probably stands for Dealer Management System. I believe this thing lived its life in an auto dealership or in a mechanics repair shop as an inventory machine for vehicles. I've got it fully cleaned up, but when you try to start it up, basically you hear a slight relay click and then nothing. I can access the internal IMM, the integrated management module, but when you try to boot it up, that module just restarts and nothing happens. I had concluded that this was some sort of general fault on the main board because on the back of the power supply, there are some LEDs that indicate if it thinks everything's okay, and those seemed all right. But some viewers pointed out that I should actually probably watch these LEDs when I click the power button to see if they blink, because the behavior is as if it's losing power, and there might be something wrong with this PSU. So today we're going to power it on and watch what these back LEDs do when we hit the power button, but that's just for science, because regardless of the outcome there, we're going to put this spare PSU in. This spare was theoretically pulled from a working unit, and it does appear to be in good shape, but if that doesn't work, we'll just replace the whole main board. Let's see if we can't get this IBM running on the wall. Let's get into it. You might be thinking to yourself, what is that thing doing up there? Well, I didn't think I was going to get this thing running for a while, if ever. And after a few attempts a few weeks ago, I had a burst of inspiration to turn it into art. I really like the design IBM had for this machine and this X series of machines in general. And I like the ADP logo on there, that's pretty unique. And it's just been really cool to have this open server here up on the wall. I smile every time I walk in the room. But I was able to find a bunch of replacement parts on eBay for cheap. So I'm gonna climb up there and let's see what we can do. This is gonna be a little awkward to film given that it's up on the wall. But that's okay. The first problem is I didn't think I left myself enough room to get this back in, but I think I can do it. So let me get this in there real quick. This is the original power supply. Okay, if I have to move these, that's no big deal, which I might. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna unscrew this. It's not in a stud or anything, it's just in the drywall. There's another one right above it. I'm gonna unscrew those, that'll give me more room. Okay, I think I have enough slack now. Oh yeah, no problem. Look at that. We're in. Makes a nice little shelf for your tools. Just trying to remind myself what kind of state I left it in. I did leave the CMOS battery in, and I think it's important to have this riser in. I don't think any of the hard drive bays are connected, none of the peripherals, and that's no big deal. The front panel is all wired up, which we need. Let's see here. Our light path diagnostics unit and power button, that's good. These are a little sketchy. Might throw a piece of tape on that before we power it up. The eagle-eyed among you noticed I accidentally put the new one in. Old one's back in. You can tell because it's got its IMM original MAC address tag. The guys at IBM did not design this to be sideways on a wall without the lid on. So we're just gonna have a little bit of protection. Of course, I don't expect those to turn on with this old PSU unless some miracle has taken place since I've mounted it. Speaking of running it, if we get lucky and this thing powers up with the new PSU, I can't leave it running like this very long. These CPUs don't have fans. They rely on airflow coming past them from the fans in the front, which to work optimally has a bunch of baffles and the lid on, obviously. So if we get it powered up, I'll let it do its thing for a couple of minutes, but then I'll turn it off and put the lid on if I'm going to use it for any reasonable amount of time. It'd be really cool to get like a plexiglass plate and put that on here with the baffles and everything, or maybe even without the baffles, so that I could power it on whenever I wanted. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't know why I'm so optimistic. Let's get things going here. There's no power coming into this cable yet. That, some video, and the IMM remote management. What could go wrong? Okay, you should be able to see the status indicators on the power supply. I'm going to give it power, and we should hear it turn on. It is. So I need to let the IMM boot up for a couple minutes, and then we'll try to power it on. That LED is the IMM booting up. It'll slow down its blinking when it's ready to be powered on. Okay, it's ready. What I'm going to do is press the power button on the front and see what these lights do. They do nothing. Uh-oh. Well, that was disappointing. I was really hoping to see that thing try to reset itself. At least the lights blink. I didn't notice anything. Here's the old one. Feeling a lot less hopeful now. New one in. Let's get that plugged in. Same story. Let's give this new one some power. Well, turns on at least. All right, we'll let it do its thing for a couple minutes. I had to get clever with the monitor there. VGA cable's not long enough. The fan on that new one sounds like absolute crap. Anyway, it's been up long enough. Here's the IMM I was talking about. Can log into there, no problem. That's what's flowing over this network cable here. Let's click the power button. Nothing. Okay, I'll pull the board. This is unfortunate, but not altogether unexpected. This connector cracked the very first time I took the computer apart. It was really gunked up and stuck in there, though this pin had been fine. And before you get excited, I had checked this connector many times. It was not the issue. This is a new breakage, unfortunately. So what I'm gonna have to do is shove that in there and probably glue it with super glue from the top. I think that's my best bet. This is an important connector. Connects that front panel, the light path diagnostics panel, and that's actually how you turn the machine on. I think that's going to be fine. I'll let that sit for a little bit and we should be good to go. You can see the gold connector of the pin I just repaired is lined up with all the others. So as long as the glue on the top stays strong, we should be okay. I can't really do anything here without masking this off, because if glue gets down into there, obviously the pin can't slide up in to the connector. So I think we'll be okay. It'll be pretty obvious if that pin pops out when I reconnect it. Took the RAM out while it was on the wall. We'll get this CPU out. You know, I washed the crap out of this board and it still just kind of smells. Don't worry about that. We'll get our friends here all cleaned up just to get dirty again. This is an Intel E5506 2.13 gigahertz Xeon, by the way. And I hope I throw it in that board and it works and I never see this again in my life. Here's the new board. It appears to be in really good condition. It's in the installation tray. Let me flip it over for you. You install it attached to this metal tray and slide it into the case, and this one came with another tray attached, so that's fine. Seller shipped it with a little bit of cardboard to protect the slot. I probably should have checked this before I got so far into things. And yep, all those pins look okay, I believe. Let's deal with our CMOS battery. Take a look at that guy. He's okay. It's supposed to be a 3-volt battery. I think 2.8 is probably going to work for our purposes. These CPUs have grooves here and here, which line up with the socket so that you can't put it in wrong. Though you can actually kind of jam it in there and make a real mess of the pins. Ask me how I know. If you didn't see the other video, this is the best part of this machine. The cable you connect the diagnostics panel on the front with all the lights with is called Bling Bling. All back together with the riser boards, the new main board. Got our patented safety tape, just in case OSHA's watching. And then I put the original power supply back in because, if I'm being honest, it sounds better than the replacement I got. The new one's got some funny fan bearing thing going on. Everything's hooked back up. There's a really good chance when I give it power, it's going to roar to life because I took the CMOS battery out. Assuming the main board works, it'll notice there's a configuration change and it might just rip itself right on. So we're going to plan for that. Let's try it out. All right, giving it power. Nothing yet, just the regular blinking lights. Well, that's fine. I need to figure out what the IMM status on this board is. See if we can get in there. Right when I turn the camera off, The fan's ripped up. Here we go. She's running. It got this far last time and then died. Back from the dead. Yes. We'll see how long this takes. I don't have a keyboard on it or anything. I'm gonna have to crawl back up there. Quiet's way down after it does this first init. I need to get a keyboard on there. Climbed up there, got a keyboard on. She's quiet. All right, look at that. Yes, alive. So it's not gonna find any boot devices, of course. Our journey has just begun. Let's get into setup. Yeah, this is looking really good. It's responding to keyboard input. This is a really nice UEFI BIOS thing going on here. Let's see if we can configure the IMM, or at least learn what it's up to. Yeah, that was never gonna work. Let's enable DHCP, so it'll grab one from my network. ECCT-SMC. I wonder if that's the company that used to own this. This all looks fine. We can reset the IMM right away, and the whole screen freezes. Cool. You know what I should actually do is just reset it to defaults. I think that'll get rid of the password. I'm sure they have one if they set an IP. What the heck? Folks, this thing is quiet. I am impressed. I'm going to try to get into the IMM, see how that goes. Here we are pointed at the IMM, the Integrated Management Module interface. The computer has power, but it's not turned on. So this IMM runs whenever the power supplies have power, and you can access it over your network. The reset did work, even though it said it didn't. The default username is user ID, all caps, and then password, all caps, but the O is a 0. Let's log in here. To IBM's credit, or maybe someone else's credit, as we'll see in a moment, I'm in a modern browser, and it just works. This stuff is well over 14 years old, so they used a very simple JavaScript HTML front end and a SOAP backend, as we will see. The IMM allows remote management. A lot of enterprise servers have these, and they're often bespoke and different depending on the manufacturer. This X series from IBM at the time had these IMM modules. We can go look at the event log. All this stuff here from 1991 is me using the computer when I pulled the CMOS battery to check its voltage, the time reset, and I haven't fixed it yet. And then down here, we can see logs going back to 2017, back in this replacement motherboard's service life. And if we go all the way back, we've even got logs way back in 2009, which is probably when that board was built. Kind of cool to see. You've got things in here like drives being automatically disabled due to faults being detected and then someone turning them back on 2 minutes later for whatever reason. If we look at the source code for this, we can see it's actually copyright American Megatrends. Now, American Megatrends is a big BIOS manufacturer. And I've noticed when I look at at least the front end source for various remote management utilities, the developers have a habit of leaving comments in the source code all over the place, even though these things ship to a device and are sort of baked in there relatively permanently until someone decides to update. For example, we've got the author names for this homepage implementation. And if we start snooping around in the dev tools, it calls this WSMan endpoint a lot right here. And it's actually a SOAP API. So SOAP, of course, being a fairly complex XML-based way to interact with a client and a server, as was the style at this time. So you can see here it's asking for something called get sensor values. And then if we look at the one below, it's asking for get asserted events. So that's kind of funny to see that time capsule. I always like poking around at this stuff. Here's a library that they wrote called EXT way back, 03, 04, at least, when this library was started, maybe. And it's a utility library for reading cookies and things like that by Brandon Burrell. Your code lives on. Here's a good example of the type of comments you see. They've got this show debug window function that they were using for something, and the author is saying, I wonder if this is an IE bug because, etc., etc. And so they leave their thoughts, and sometimes there's commented out debug code shipped, flashed to these machines. It's fascinating. But of course, web development 2010 and earlier was sort of the Wild West. You were rolling your own frameworks. You didn't have something like Webpack that was scrubbing comments out. You didn't have a build or transpile system for the JavaScript. These remote management modules tend to be pretty front-end heavy. So that EXT library we're looking at has this debug expose properties utility they used for whatever. You could pass it an object, and it spits back a little window that shows the name and values of the object you give it. So a bunch of debugging code that's still in. That's enough of that. I love playing around with these remote management tools. It's one of the reasons I really like using these old enterprise servers, or any enterprise server really. But this thing came with some hard drives. Let's see what the story is there. This machine caught my eye and I bought it for several reasons. It was in pretty rough shape, so it looked like an interesting project, see if I could get it running. I liked the ADP logo on the front. That was unique, and it had some interesting labels. Turns out this one that was on the left side of the machine is an IP owned by ADP, a massive block that they own. It also had a DMS sticker on the right, which probably stands for Dealer Management System. I have misplaced that down here somewhere. And it had hard drives. Now, given the horrendous state the thing was in, I thought maybe these weren't wiped when it was decommissioned. They just got it out of there, tried to e-waste it, and an eBay reseller ended up with it. So let's get the SAS backplanes all hooked up, get these in there, and maybe there's something on them. This board here is a multi-purpose riser board, and it's got some interesting features. A bunch of stuff plugs into here. The SAS controller plugs in here. I'll have to go find that. It's got a SATA port. It's got power for the tape drive. It's got a USB for the tape drive. And it's also got this other USB key here, labeled USB hypervisor key. So you could buy these machines in an optional configuration, and IBM would give you a USB key containing VMware ESX or maybe ESXi by that time, and you could boot it from the USB sitting in the riser, and that'd be how you'd run your VMs on the machine. Kind of interesting. These are the hard drive backplanes right here, and I need to get them plugged down in here for power. The SAS controller plugs into the top of our riser card here, just like that. It's got this nice custom plastic retaining clip on the edge. And of course, here's our SAS cable connections to get to the backplanes. Here are some OG IBM light tubes, plastic tubes. LEDs down here shine up through, and you can see their values. The backplanes plugged in here, just like that. This machine is becoming complete again. Now the only thing not connected is the tape drive on the front. It's in really bad shape and needs to be fully disassembled and cleaned before it's trustworthy, and I don't have tapes anyway, so we'll leave it. Hard drives are in. I'm gonna climb up there and turn it on. Now that's really nice. The fans are staying at that much lower volume and speed they eventually landed on after revving at full tilt, because clearly it stored some sort of information about what state it was in. It says connecting boot devices and adapters. We'll see here. I have my doubts. Well, it's definitely sitting on this screen longer than when the drives were out. Uh-oh. All of the disks from your previous configuration are gone. Yep. These disks either got damaged or were wiped or something. I kept the order the same. That's too bad. Let's see what happens. Press any key to continue. What's that do? Ooh. So this must just be the BIOS. Ah, well. Let's take a look at boot devices. This was set in this BIOS previously when I was looking at it the first time. I wonder... Yeah. Yep, too bad. Okay, let's see here. I love how quiet this thing is. If I had the lid on, it'd be even better. Here's my sweet setup. Yeah, nothing. Let's check out the configuration utility this time. I don't have a mouse. Let's see, maybe it doesn't see the drives at all. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not convinced it even sees the drives. This application is a little bit of a joke. What is this clip art doing here? I'm going to turn it off and reseat everything. I don't think it sees the drives. Aha, we're getting somewhere. I think they're in the wrong backplane and moved one of them. I'm doing it while it's running, guys. The IBM sales guy promised me that this was allowed. Well, well, well. 3 drives. Let's see here. Scan devices. This UI, I can't recommend LSI, Mega RAID, BIOS config utility. You know, it's not good. Foreign configs. Let's preview. Yes, I would like to import this. For the record, folks, I'm not worried about losing whatever very boring proprietary dealership information is on these drives. And they were probably wiped already anyway, Okay, what do we got here? Sure. Got one virtual drive and some sort of RAID. We have a hot spare. Okay, works for me. Presumably they're empty. Woohoo! We're booting into something. Come on, old girl. Just hangs here. Memory issue? Okay, I'll show you what happens. Let's just boot to hard disk 0, I think. It's trying to net boot. Now it's on the SAS controller. Found the virtual drive on the SAS controller. Grub is in there. I pressed a key last time. Let's see what it does. Yeah, I think we got a boot config problem. Bummer. Yeah, it just hangs up here. Here's what happens when you press a key. Booting ADP OS 833. Isn't that interesting? Oh, but it can't quite get through. So yeah, the stuff is on those drives. And I didn't notice this before. ADP.image here. Yeah. I've been doing a little reading online, and it's sitting at that kernel direct mapping message. And I think if we just wait, it might continue with the boot process. In the meantime, let's peruse the IBM website from 2009. Now my x3650 M2 has 2010 date codes, but if you go to the archive and look at the IBM website in 2010, you really have a hard time finding the M2. The M3 was out by then, and so I'm not exactly sure when the 3650 came out, maybe 08, 07 even? So let's see, if we get stuck, we're gonna call this chick and give her this priority code. But let's see what we're here for. So I have the 2.13 gigahertz E5506. That would have set you back list price $2,499 US, at least in 2009. Adjusted for inflation, just $3,600. So not a crazy expensive machine by any means. We do have the 2 gigs of RAM, so probably a pretty stock configuration in our case. But you could get them pretty maxed out. 5200, a whole 8 gigs of RAM. RAM used to be so expensive. Also wanted to show something I noticed. This is the homepage from 2009, and this is a Flash app. I'm obviously on archive.org, and they're using a tool called Ruffle, which is a Flash emulator. I don't know, maybe they've been doing this for a long time, but this is actually like a SWF, an embedded SWF, and I'm able to see it here. That is really, really cool that the archive's doing that. Well, I'm happy to report, after about 10 minutes of that previous screen, it finally comes to a login prompt, C162415. I think that's the number that was above the IP address on the IP label. I was trying all sorts of stuff, serial cable, getting its NIC online, and I see it's connected to my network at 206.9385, the IP address on the front, of course, from that label. And at this point, all we could probably do is image the disks and see if we can get to them that way, because I can't imagine I'm gonna guess this password. I don't know what that means. Let's try it. RSA. Wow. Let's try blank. Oh. I'm doing root admin, and it kind of hangs for a while and gets me to here. I think this is part of the software it's running. I was searching what I was seeing on that CLI a little bit, and if you search RSA pass ID, you can find this website, which is very likely the application or a version of the application that my x3650 is running. Someone's got it on the internet for whatever reason. CDK drive. This is why Google scraped it. If you look at the HTML source, it's got a hidden form called RSA prompts, and it's got the same RSA pass ID, RSA passcode stuff we were seeing on the command line. And this CDK thing is a pretty good indicator, because CDK Global is a spin-off of what used to be called ADP Dealer Services. So of course that all lines up. I bet my machine here is hosting a very similar CDK piece of software, or maybe an older ADP version. Let's get a computer on the same network. Okay, I've got the Think Center here on the same network as our x3650. It's just sitting at that login screen. Let's load that thing up in a browser. As you'll recall, it's at 206.9385. we actually have something. Let's try IE. Okay, Internet Explorer. Ooh, a little better. The website wants to install the following add-on: PC config check control from ADP. Yes, I absolutely want to install that. Yes. Well, we're getting somewhere. It knows the system name. That's definitely our guy. Obviously, I don't know how to log in. I did forget my password. Check this out. Root. This is... If this works, this is going to be like the funniest thing. I am not set up for self-service. No, I am not. Available software. Ooh. Yeah, that logo looks like a CDK logo. Ooh, what do we got here? This is really interesting. I need the ADP Drive Portal 14 Assemblies Baseline. That's me. Yeah, it hosts installers you can install. Okay. Go for it. Oh yeah, unknown publisher. Get me. ADP Drive Portal 14 Managed Assemblies Baseline. This is very interesting. Or I find it interesting anyway. Okay, that did nothing. Let's do all. Wow, this is just fascinating. CDK Drive. Yeah, so for sure, we've got some CDK stuff going on here. Oh, look at all this. Drive Express installer? What? This is like a whole ecosystem. Look at this. Yes, install it. This is so cool. Oh yeah, look at this. I don't think any of this is going to be surprising to someone that's used this before, but this is quite the package. I can't speak to whether it's good or not, but yeah, here we go. Look at that. ADP Dealer Services. So we've got some ADP branded stuff in here, some CDK branded stuff in here. Wow. It's odd I can just get in here without a username and password, but I bet all of these applications will require that, you know, once they start up and point at the server. The previous installer finished, and we've got a new installer. Again, that's our little unique name, C162415, and our IP. This stuff's all CDK branded. I have no idea what any of this is, in case that wasn't obvious. Doing its thing. All written in .NET, apparently. It thinks it just downloaded .NET, even though this thing is not on the internet. .NET 3.5 was not enough. On to .NET 4, apparently. These .NET frameworks are just putting this Pentium 4 to work. We've got some new friends on the desktop. CDK Drive. It just points at that server, tries to start up some sort of application. Well, this just hangs. I am able to launch the ADP Software install agent. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Yes. Oh my God. We're in, folks. Let's start managing some car inventory. Look at this. Wow. It probably doesn't come out on the microphone, but those drives are clanging away up there. Okay. This is the same screen we had in IE, except now it's got this just ridiculous wrapper application around it. 2001 CDK Global. Wow. Let's see, versions. Oh man, a version of every single DLL it's using. Fascinating. So yeah, I won't be able to log in, obviously. What do you think? Root blank. Doesn't support Windows XP Pro. Why didn't you tell me that before I installed all that crap? DMS. Alright, look at this. I wonder what this C number stuff is about. The letter C and then 6 digits. And apparently it's literally called a C number. Well, I think you get the point. Well, I'm happy to see it work. Eventually, I think I'll just image those drives and then wipe them, of course. I don't really need what's on there. Let's try one last thing. You think it'll let me boot Ubuntu from the hypervisor slot? The embedded hypervisor. Boot failed. Whack. Alright, USB, normal USB this time. I couldn't get that thing to boot off a USB stick, even in the normal USB drives, so I'll burn a live CD later or maybe net boot it or something, and I'll image those drives. That was unexpectedly interesting. This DMS machine is clearly supposed to be kind of the hub of your dealership, and all your workstations connect to it, not just for the server software it's hosting, but like installation of the local workstation software and everything. I'm really glad we were able to load that up and see that much even without knowing the username and password. I'm going to image it for posterity, of course, and those drives are clanging away, so definitely needs to happen. But I suspect at the end of the day, all that's on there is, of course, the software you saw and some databases that are managing some dealership. In this case, we just had a dealership management box, but the lesson here I think for all of us is you don't know where your hard drives are going to end up when you decommission your stuff, so you should definitely wipe them, or Collab Retro is going to put them up on YouTube. But we got this thing running. It's a shame that it took replacing basically the whole computer. I'm still of the opinion that 1 or 2 components have gone bad on this. We saw it very briefly boot, and then snap, it was done. But it's been a really fun journey. I'm really glad I got this thing to boot and could get to know it a little better. These enterprise machines all have a different feel, even if you're just interacting with their BIOS. And it was really cool to see that the RAID configuration stayed intact and we could actually get this thing booting with its original ADP software, whatever that software was. I really like how this thing looks on the wall. Brings a smile to my face every time I walk in this room. I think IBM really nailed it with this design aesthetic. That's yet another reason I bought this machine. And it's even cooler that I know it boots. If I ever have need for a machine of this vintage, I know I can just pull it off the wall or run it on the wall, as you saw. So that's a wrap for this x3650 M2. I'm going to move on to some other projects where I don't have to climb on the bench just to plug in a serial cable. I hope you liked following along on this journey. And this was a 3-parter, so if you haven't seen the other 2, I'll link them down in the description. I've got big plans in terms of video content coming out in 2024, so if you'd like to support the channel, I've got a Patreon. I post behind the scenes type videos, eBay hauls, that sort of thing. But in the meantime, thanks for sticking with me as I slog through this interesting ADP x3650 M2, and I'll see you in the next video.